Hey there guys, my name is Ronan Lorekeeper and welcome back to D&D Talks. We will be covering the thing I hinted at last episode, which is the Divine Dragon God Tarrasque Lich. This is going to be a bit different because it is going to be a little bit homebrewy. You kind of have to at this point to get that level of power, because it's definitely not going to be in the book. But it's also not homebrew, because at the same time, you will be using components that you find from the world to invent your own spell, which should be possible for all wizards, or else what's the point of being a wizard? It's the whole point of Mordenkainen and the others, that they invent spells. So, how you're going to do this is you're going to be using the formula I came up with in the last episode to cast Karsus' avatar. You might be wondering, why would you need that to create a Tarrasque dragon? Well, because you're going to modify Karsus' avatar to, let's call it Ronan's avatar, because it's my spell. Shameless plug. But, so you're going to be using this a lot, because you are going to be hunting down some of the most powerful creatures in all of D&D to even make this possible. Because after looking through, I think I figured out a way to make some sort of a ceiling spell magic item in order to make this possible. You'll be creating a sword, or preferably a sword, but it can be a similar weapon that will also act as a phylactery. This is where it's going to get a bit weird. You remember the deck of many things, right? Well, you're going to have to push up the risk a bit, because you're going to need a second card from that. You need to draw the skull card. You might be wondering, why? Why the skull card? Why in hell would you want me to fight the Avatar of Death? And I would say, because of its weapon. You need to successfully wrestle away its weapon, or break off the head of the scythe or whatever, because of the spectral steel involved. See, it's a special scythe. I might put up a stat block, but just in case I don't. Here is the Avatar of Death. I don't know if you can see that well, but it doesn't require an attack roll, because it's a spectral scythe of spectral steel, spectral wood, all that kind of stuff. And so it ignores armor. It just slices through targets. You need to be able to get this. And then you need to take that steel, take it to an Azure on the plane of fire, or summon one from the plane of fire with the appropriate summoning spell, which would just be conjure elementals, selecting fire, and pushing it up using advanced spell slots. Then you will get him to start forging a sword for you out of that metal, because they are the best beings for working with magical materials, no matter what they are. Then go to your nearest demi-lich, slay said demi-lich, take the soul gem teeth, and preferably the eyes as well. Work those into the hilt of the sword, which can be any metal, preferably something magical, such as mithril or adamantine. Then, after you've worked those into the hilt, the pommel, how about, can be the eyes. It'll look kind of weird. Maybe you can space it out differently, or put the gems into the actual spectral sword itself, but the teeth can go along the guard. I'll get to that in a second. It's going to tie into a bigger component, which is, to be honest, it's much easier to get this one, but it's also harder in some ways. You need a slod gem, and not just any slod gem. You need a death slod gem, the most powerful of all slod gems, probably black, because of the slot itself. You need to hunt one down, successfully pull out the gem without breaking it, and then have the Azure work it into the hilt of the sword. Keep the slot alive, because you don't want it to shatter. It will be overwritten in the final check of the spell. Just keep the slot with you and command it using the sword and the gem. Just keep it in stable condition. After you have acquired those 3 items, you're going to need probably the worst 2 to acquire. Well, the Demi-Lich was already really bad. You know what? I'm going to say the Demi-Lich was the worst. I started off with the worst. Let's go to the second worst now. You're going to need to first find... This one's not too hard. An Aboleth, And once you find an aboleth, I need you to take that aboleth, tear it to shreds, and rip out its eye. Keep that eye. Put it in a jar or something. Don't look at it. Don't listen to it. It's still alive. Aboleths don't die when you rip out their eyes. Just keep the eye. Then you need to find a death tyrant. The easiest way to do this would be to first find just a normal beholder, and then force it to think about mortality. Hopefully it'll turn into a death tyrant. Then you need to defeat said death tyrant, preferably not kill it, and then transfer its central eye using some sort of magic, maybe a wish spell, maybe imprisonment or something, out of the skull. This is where your first Arcana check will be. This will be a minimum of 20, maximum of 30, depending on your DM and how experienced you are. You need to combine the eye of the aboleth with the eye of the death tyrant into one. Combining the most powerful necromantic magic with the most powerful sealing and mind control magic into one. And once you've done that, you have created the Eye of Sealing, which is what I've just chosen to name it. Then, keep it. Definitely keep it away from you. Keep it in like a pocket dimension. I suggest demiplane. Just nowhere near you. You cannot let that thing, blast you. Find a way to subdue it until the time. Then, you need... from there on, it gets a bit easier, quote unquote, because you are going to go to the Tarrasque. And you might be thinking, well, if I'm doing Curse's Avatar, wouldn't I have already collected blood from the Tarrasque? For this version, no, you have not collected blood for the Tarrasque, because you're going to finish that as a massive, modification to the spell. First, get the Gold Dragon Gizzard and the Hydra Bile. Then, you need to coat your blade in the Hydra Bile. Okay, so begin the preparation for the spell. Put the gizzard down. Slice it open slightly, and put the eye into it, directly up, so it almost looks like some kind of weird creature that is staring up at you out of fleshy eyelids. Then, this is where the Arcana checks... So first, you're going to need an Arcana check of 30 to get all of these to, and then cover all of them, cover the eye and everything in Hydra Bile. You're going to need an Arcana check of 30 just to make sure these all form the proper enchantment. Because even by NPC magic standards, you need a 30 Arcana check just to keep this process together, especially without waking up the Tarrasque. Then, take back what I said about coating the blade. Just coat all that stuff. And then, as the spell comes to a close and you begin just finishing up the avatar... Well, first off, this is preferable for Bahamut or Tiamat. I'm going to post a stat block later about Bahamut, because, well, Tiamat would be easier. Maybe I should do Tiamat, but you'll find out about that later when I decide. But take the sword. And this is where the final check will be. Make sure Bahamut is fully agreed to this. And then make a final check, which is the hardest possible check you can make, of 35. Stabbing down with the sword, finishing the spell on hour 6. Stabbing through the eye, through the gizzard, plunging into the Tarrasque, spilling blood, causing the final catalyst to come into contact with everything, and finish the casting of this modified spell. Hopefully, now that instead of usually you're using the blood as a component, but this time you're not just using the blood, you're using the blood still connected to and through the Tarrasque. You're channeling this spell through the Tarrasque. So you're kind of becoming less of an avatar, you would become less of an avatar than before, but because most of that power is going into the Tarrasque, approximately 50 to 75%. The Tarrasque will transform immediately, gaining the power of said god, in this case Bahamut. The transformation will be immediate and swift as it becomes an avatar of this divine dragon god Tarrasque. It'll become a lich as its soul is torn and bound to the sword, becoming a phylactery. The death slod immediately dying, torn to a million pieces, as its soul becomes a part of the gem and spreading to the soul gems among the sword. Becoming the ultimate necromantic creature, its control fully under your grasp as the eye is sacrificed. Its necromantic and mind-washing power spreading over the sword, yourself, and the Tarrasque, binding all of you together under your arcane might. As the spell concludes, you will have created the strongest creature in creation, a creature that is meant to eat gods, and combined with its mortal enemy, a god, into one perfect killer. You will have full control as long as you have control of the sword and are attuned to it. The moment you break attunement with the sword, probably it'll shatter into a million pieces and the entire spell will come unwound. So I don't suggest doing that. Based on how delicate the spell work for this is and how powerful this spell is, probably you will cease to exist the moment this sword becomes unattuned from you. But it'll probably be hard to unattune from you. Then, you will no longer have to worry about any gods that come after you for this spell, because you will be powerful enough to fight them head on, and so will the Tarrasque. The Tarrasque will be unstoppable at this point. You are having a creature that is probably beyond Mystra at this point, because it is spell immune. It is not only spell immune, it is proficient in its own spells. It can cast undead. It has power over the undead. It can absorb souls. It's the perfect entity. We're talking like, if you were to give this a 5th edition challenge rating, sure, 30 is the max, but I would give it more like 45 to 50. Maybe larger. I have no clue. Like, I still have to come up with the full stat block for this. I came up with a stat block for if you used a white dragon instead of if you used a white dragon and like a minor god as like the component. But like I said, multiple attempts. I've failed. It's really hard. So yeah, that is what I'd like to bring to you today. If any of you can complete this and make it possible, I applaud. I really want this to be a thing. I can't wait to try it again, but that seems like the most likely way to do it. And I think Adventurers League, and I know this is very kind of homebrew, but at the same time, it seems possible because wizards are able to modify spells. Heck, you do it in several modules. You modify magic to bend to your will multiple times. It just requires the correct checks and role-playing. And sure, Adventurers League isn't much role-playing, but you can still do things that don't necessarily make sense to Adventurers League, such as taming a guard drake in the Rise of Tiamat. It's possible. Such as modifying a dragon-tooth dagger so it works against the cult instead of for them. Taking the Mask of the Dragon Queen for yourself and becoming a worm speaker. All of that. Like, I know I'm using one example, one module here, but that's just where I had the best examples. So yeah, this is very possible. It's just incredibly hard. But if you do this, you have created the strongest creature in all of D&D. Full stop. I've been Ronan Lorekeeper, and I will see you guys later. Bye.